Emily Parker walked quickly through the crowded airport, clutching her worn brown handbag and her small carry-on. Her feet ached after working a double shift at the hospital. She was a nurse, used to long hours, used to tired muscles, but today was different. Today, she was flying out to visit her friend in another city, hoping for just a few days of rest before going back to work again. The announcements echoed above her head. Passengers hurried past, dragging their suitcases, rushing to their gates. Emily looked at the number on her boarding pass and squinted. She had never been good at navigating airports. Her eyes felt heavy, and her head buzzed from lack of sleep. She followed the signs, trusting her instincts more than her tired mind. When she reached a quiet section of the terminal, she noticed the gate looked different, quieter, calmer, without the usual long lines. A neatly dressed attendant smiled at her as she approached. "Good evening, miss," the attendant greeted warmly. "Right this way." Emily blinked in surprise. "Oh, thank you," she murmured. Maybe she was just lucky. Maybe her budget flight wasn't full after all. She handed over her boarding pass, and the attendant glanced at it for only a second before giving her a polite nod. "Welcome aboard." Emily stepped onto the sleek jet bridge. It felt strange, too private, too polished. And then, as she entered the aircraft, her eyes widened. This was no ordinary plane. The seats were wide, more like armchairs than airline seats. Golden lights glowed softly from the ceiling. The carpet felt thick beneath her feet. She glanced around nervously, wondering if she had made a mistake. But before she could speak, a flight attendant approached her with a kind smile. "Would you like something to drink before takeoff? Perhaps champagne?" Emily almost laughed. "Oh no, thank you. Just water." She sat down quickly, clutching her bag on her lap. Her heart pounded. This couldn't be right. Budget flights did not look like this. But exhaustion pressed heavily on her, and she thought, maybe airlines are changing things. Maybe I just don't know. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps echoed through the cabin. Emily looked up and her breath caught. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped inside, his presence commanding the room instantly. His dark hair was neatly combed back, and his eyes sharp, intelligent, yet tired swept across the cabin. He was clearly not an ordinary traveler. Something about him radiated wealth and authority. He stopped in his tracks when he saw her. There was silence for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice deep, calm, but slightly curious. "Who are you?" Emily froze. I'm Emily Parker." The man frowned slightly, then glanced at the flight attendants. "She's not supposed to be here." Emily's cheeks flushed. Her worst fear confirmed. "Oh no, I think I must have gotten on the wrong plane. I'm so sorry." She stood up quickly, gripping her bag tightly. "I'll leave right now," but the man raised his hand, stopping her. Something in his expression changed. Instead of irritation, there was a flicker of amusement. "Sit down," he said calmly. "It's too late to leave now. We're about to take off." Emily hesitated, her heart racing. "But this isn't my flight." He studied her with interest. "Clearly. But you're here now." He moved past her and sat down across the aisle, his posture elegant and confident. The attendants whispered quietly among themselves, but the man waved them off. Emily sank back into her seat, her face burning with embarrassment. "I really didn't mean to. This was a mistake." "I can see that," the man replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Relax. You won't be thrown out mid-air." She let out a nervous laugh, trying to breathe. "This is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me." "Perhaps the most unexpected thing," he corrected gently. He extended a hand. "Alexander Reed." Her eyes widened slightly. The name was familiar. She had read it in newspapers, seen it on billboards attached to big companies. He was a billionaire businessman, known across the world. And here she was, sitting on his private jet. Shaking his hand cautiously, she said, "Emily Parker. Just a nurse. Just a nurse." His eyes softened. "That sounds more important than it sounds. You save lives. I only sign papers." His words caught her off guard. For a man so wealthy, he didn't sound arrogant. Instead, there was a strange honesty in his tone. The jet began to move. Emily gripped her seat nervously, but Alexander noticed. "Not fond of flying." "Not fond of flying in the wrong plane," she admitted, managing a shy smile. He chuckled lightly, the sound warm and surprising. "Well, consider this an unplanned adventure, Miss Parker." Emily looked out the window as the plane lifted into the night sky. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She was supposed to be on a budget flight, sipping bottled water and sitting between two strangers. Instead, she was flying across the world in luxury, seated opposite one of the richest men alive. She didn't know where this strange mistake would lead. But for the first time in a long while, despite her tiredness, Emily felt wide awake. The plane glided smoothly through the night sky. Emily sat stiffly in her seat, still unable to believe she was on a billionaire's private jet. She kept her eyes on the window, hoping the stars would calm her racing heart. Across the aisle, Alexander Reed leaned back in his chair, studying her quietly. He was used to silence on his flights. Usually, he traveled alone or with business partners who spoke only about contracts and profits. But now, a nurse who had stumbled into his jet by mistake sat across from him, clutching her bag like it was her only shield. "Tell me, Miss Parker," Alexander began in his calm, low voice, "how does a nurse end up on my plane?" Emily turned to him quickly, her cheeks pink. "I told you it was a mistake. I was so tired after work, and I must have read the gate number wrong. I thought this was my flight." He smiled faintly. "And no one stopped you?" She shrugged. "They looked at my boarding pass, but maybe they didn't notice. Or maybe they were too polite to correct me." She bit her lip nervously. "I really shouldn't be here." Alexander tilted his head. "Perhaps not. But fate is a curious thing." Emily frowned slightly. "You don't actually believe in fate, do you?" "Don't you?" he countered. "How else would you explain this? A tired nurse accidentally boarding a jet meant only for me." His eyes sparkled with a hint of amusement. Emily shook her head, though she couldn't help but smile. "I'd call it clumsiness, not fate." For a moment, their laughter filled the cabin. The tension between them softened, replaced by something lighter. The flight attendant approached, asking if they wanted dinner. Emily hesitated, embarrassed by the silver trays of fine food she had never even seen before. "I'm fine," she whispered. Alexander noticed her discomfort. "Bring her something simple," he instructed. "Soup and bread will do." Emily looked at him, surprised. "How did you know that's what I'd want?" He smiled gently. "Because you look like someone who prefers honesty over show. Besides, soup is comfort food, isn't it?" She nodded slowly, warmth spreading in her chest. He was right. As they ate, Alexander asked about her work. "Being a nurse must be exhausting." "It is," Emily admitted, sipping her soup. "Long hours, heavy workload. But when a patient smiles at you after recovering, it feels worth it. Even small things matter, holding someone's hand, giving comfort when they're scared. That's what keeps me going." Alexander's gaze softened. "You find joy in helping strangers?" "Of course," she said simply. "Isn't that what life is about? Helping people, even when it's hard." For a moment, Alexander was quiet. He looked down at his untouched plate. Most people I meet don't think that way. They measure life in numbers, profits, success. Not kindness. Emily studied him curiously. But you must help people too. You give jobs, run companies. He cut her off gently. It isn't the same. People see my money before they see me. To them, I'm only a door to opportunity. His honesty surprised her. He didn't sound proud. He sounded lonely. I don't see you that way, Emily said softly. Honestly, I didn't even recognize you until you told me your name. That made him laugh, a genuine, warm laugh that filled the quiet cabin. You're the first person in years who has said that. Emily blushed but smiled too. Well, you're just Alexander to me. Something shifted between them then. The walls around him, walls built from wealth, reputation, and isolation, seemed to lower just a little. And Emily, who always lived simply, began to see the man behind the title. Hours passed, and their conversation flowed easily. Emily shared small stories from the hospital, the little boy who gave her a crayon drawing to say thank you, the elderly woman who insisted Emily call her grandma while she stayed in the ward. Alexander listened with genuine interest, laughing at her funny tales, frowning at the hard ones. In return, he spoke of his travels: New York, Tokyo, Dubai. Yet despite his stories of luxury, his tone always carried emptiness. I've been to many places, he admitted, but rarely with the right company. Wealth can buy tickets, but not memories worth keeping. Emily looked at him with gentle eyes. Maybe that's why fate or clumsiness put me here tonight. Alexander smiled slowly. Maybe so. As the night deepened, the jet grew quieter. The attendants disappeared behind curtains, leaving the cabin private. Emily rested her head against the seat, her eyelids heavy, but she fought to stay awake. You should sleep, Alexander said. She shook her head stubbornly. I don't want to fall asleep and wake up in a place I'm not supposed to be. He chuckled softly. Then consider yourself my guest. Wherever this jet lands, you'll be safe. Emily stared at him for a moment. She didn't know why, but she believed him. There was something steady, reassuring, about the way he spoke. Slowly, her eyes drifted shut. Alexander leaned back in his chair, still watching her. For years, his flights had been filled with silence, numbers, and thoughts of business. But tonight, a simple nurse had turned the silence into something different, something human. He found himself smiling, though he didn't know why. Perhaps it really was fate. When the jet touched down, the morning sun spread a golden light across the city below. Emily rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off her sleep. She had not meant to drift off, but exhaustion had claimed her. Now, as the wheels of the jet slowed on the runway, she sat up quickly, her heart racing again. Where are we? She asked, her voice still soft from sleep. Alexander glanced at her, amusement dancing in his eyes. Paris. Her mouth fell open. Paris? As in Paris, France. As in the City of Lights, yes, he replied calmly, fastening his watch as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Emily stared out the window, her heart thudding. She had only seen Paris in books, movies, and postcards. She had dreamed of walking along the Seine, of gazing up at the Eiffel Tower, but it was always just a faraway wish. Never once had she imagined herself actually landing there. I should go home, she whispered, more to herself than to him. This isn't where I belong. Alexander studied her carefully. And yet, here you are. The attendants opened the cabin door, and fresh Parisian air drifted inside. It carried a faint scent of morning bread and coffee from the city beyond. Emily clutched her handbag tightly, torn between embarrassment and curiosity. I'll arrange for a return flight for you if you wish, Alexander said gently. But since you're already here, would you consider staying just for a short time? As my guest. Emily hesitated. Every sensible part of her told her to decline, to go home, to avoid the whispers and misunderstandings that would surely come. But another part of her, the quiet part that longed for something beyond her routine, whispered, "What if?" I don't know, she admitted. Think of it as an adventure, Alexander encouraged softly. A chance to see the world through different eyes. Her lips curved in a small smile despite her nerves. You make it sound easy. Sometimes it is, he replied. They stepped out together into a waiting car. The streets of Paris greeted them with charm at every corner, flower shops spilling with color, small cafes filled with laughter, and balconies draped with vines. Emily pressed her face to the window like a child, unable to hide her wonder. Alexander noticed, and for the first time in a long while, he felt joy in seeing the city through someone else's eyes. He had been here countless times for business meetings, but never like this. Their first stop was a quiet cafe near the Seine. Alexander ordered coffee in smooth French, while Emily stared at the delicate pastries on display. When a plate of croissants arrived, she broke one in half, inhaling the buttery aroma. This is the best thing I've ever tasted, she said between bites, her eyes sparkling. Alexander chuckled. It's just bread. To you, she teased. But to me, it's magic. Her laughter was contagious. For a man used to luxury, it was refreshing to see someone find joy in something so simple. Later, they strolled through narrow cobblestone streets. Emily's steps were slow, her eyes catching every detail: the street musicians playing violins, the children chasing pigeons, the painter sketching lovers near a fountain. Do you always notice so much? Alexander asked as they walked. Yes, Emily said softly. If you don't look closely, you miss the beauty in small things. He thought about that, realizing how often he had rushed through life without pausing to see. They visited the Louvre, where Emily stood in awe before the paintings. She wasn't an art expert, but she spoke about the colors and emotions with such sincerity that Alexander found himself listening closely, seeing the art in a new way. At sunset, they took a boat ride on the Seine. The water glimmered gold beneath the fading light, and the city's bridges lit up one by one. Emily leaned against the rail, her eyes wide with wonder. This is unreal, she whispered. I feel like I'm dreaming. Alexander, standing beside her, found himself watching her more than the view. The excitement in her eyes was worth more than the entire skyline. Then don't wake up, he said quietly. She turned, meeting his gaze. For a moment, the noise of the city faded, leaving only the sound of water and the thrum of their hearts. That evening, they dined at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Emily wore the same simple clothes she had traveled in, yet she looked radiant under the city lights. She laughed easily, speaking about her childhood dreams, and Alexander listened intently. You must think I'm silly, she said, embarrassed after confessing she used to imagine writing her name on the walls of Paris like the old lovers in stories. Not silly, Alexander said firmly. Honest. And honesty is rare. The Eiffel Tower lit up suddenly, sparkling against the night sky. Emily gasped, her hands clapping together like a child's. Alexander smiled, though his eyes softened with something deeper. Thank you, she whispered after a while. For what? For letting me see this. For not sending me away. Alexander paused. Perhaps I needed this as much as you. Her eyes lingered on him, her heart stirring with feelings she couldn't yet name. As they drove back, Emily leaned against the car window, her thoughts swirling. She had expected only rest from her trip. Instead, she found herself in Paris with a man whose world was nothing like hers, and yet, with him, she felt strangely at ease. Alexander sat quietly beside her, lost in his own thoughts. For years, he had lived behind walls of wealth, meeting people who wanted his money, not his soul. But tonight, walking with Emily through Paris, he had felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. The city of lights had awakened something in both of them. And neither knew where it would lead. James Donovan stood just a few feet away from Maya now, his heart pounding so hard it felt like the whole terminal could hear it. His mouth was dry, his palms sweaty, yet something inside pushed him forward. He had waited too long, and if he let her walk away again, he might lose the chance forever. Maya, he whispered, his voice breaking the silence. She turned sharply. For a moment, shock crossed her face, then a wall of calm strength settled over her features. It was the same look she used to wear when she had decided something firmly. Her hand tightened around the children's, and James noticed how protective the gesture was. "Hello, James," she said finally, her tone cool and steady. It had been years since he had last heard her voice. The sound carried him back to nights when she used to whisper dreams into his ear, to mornings when she would sing softly while making coffee. Now her voice was heavier, seasoned by experience and responsibility. I didn't expect to see you here," James said, his usual confidence gone. His voice was softer, almost hesitant. "Neither did I," Maya replied. Her eyes flicked briefly to the children, then back to him, as if warning him not to say too much in front of them. The little boy tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, who is he?" he asked curiously. Maya's lips pressed together. After a pause, she said, "Just someone I used to know." The words cut into James like a knife. Just someone I used to know. Once, he had been her husband, her partner, the man she trusted with her heart. Now he was reduced to a stranger in her story. But the children, he couldn't ignore the resemblance. Every small detail reminded him of himself. The boy's eyes, the girl's smile, it was too much to dismiss. "They look like me," James blurted, unable to stop himself. His voice cracked with emotion. "Maya, are they?" "Stop." Her voice was firm, sharp, and final. She straightened her shoulders, her protective stance clear. But James pressed on, desperation shining in his eyes. "Please, Maya. I just need to know the truth. Are they mine?" Maya's expression hardened. She took a step closer, lowering her voice so the children wouldn't hear. "James, you don't get to ask me that. Not after everything." Her words hit him with full force. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but no excuse felt right. Deep down, he knew she was right. He had walked away from their marriage not physically, but emotionally long before she packed her bags. "I know I failed you," James admitted, his voice low. "I know I chose work over us. But if they're mine, Maya, I deserve to know." Her eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked back the tears. "Deserve," she repeated bitterly. "Do you think showing up now gives you that right? Do you know what I went through raising them alone? The nights when they cried and I had no one to lean on? The mornings when I worked 2 jobs just to make sure they had food on the table? You were out there chasing wealth, James, while I was here chasing survival." James felt his chest tighten with guilt. The truth of her words sank deep, heavier than any burden he had ever carried in business. For once, the man who had always been in control found himself utterly powerless. The little girl tilted her head, her dimpled smile tugging at his heart. "Mommy, is he a friend?" she asked softly. Maya hesitated. Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. Instead, she crouched down, pulling both children close, as if shielding them from him. James's throat ached. He lowered himself slowly, crouching to their level. "Hi," he said gently, his voice trembling. "My name is James." The boy studied him curiously, while the girl gave a shy smile. "Hi," she replied softly. For the briefest moment, hope sparked inside James. But Maya quickly stepped between them, her voice firm. "No, James. You don't just walk into their lives like this. You can't. He stood again, his hands shaking. Then let me earn it, he said, his voice filled with emotion. I can't change the past, Maya, but I can change what comes next. If they're mine, I want to know them. I want to be their father. Her face softened for a heartbeat, but then she shook her head. You don't know what you're asking. Being a father is not about promises made in airports. It's about showing up every single day. And you never showed up for me. Her words pierced him, but he did not turn away. You're right, James whispered. I failed you. I thought money would give us happiness, but it only cost me everything that mattered. Please, Maya, just tell me the truth. Are they mine? For a long time, she was silent. The crowd moved around them, but for James, time stood still. He waited, his heart pounding, his breath caught in his throat. Finally, Maya's eyes softened, and her voice came out as a whisper. Yes. They're yours. The words hit James like a wave. Relief, joy, guilt, and regret all crashed over him at once. His legs felt weak, his chest tight. He wanted to cry, to laugh, to shout, but no sound left his mouth. He looked at the children again, really seeing them for the first time. His children. His blood. Maya, he began, his voice trembling with gratitude and pain. She held up her hand. Don't think this changes everything. You can't erase the years you were gone. They don't even know who you are. If you want to be in their lives, you'll have to prove it. Not to me but to them. James nodded slowly, his throat too tight to speak. In that moment, he understood, this was not just about wanting to be a father. It was about becoming one, step by step, day by day. The announcement for boarding echoed through the terminal again, but James no longer cared. His journey was no longer about business flights or hotel suites. It was about the two small children standing beside Maya, the family he had lost, and the chance to fight for them now. The truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Yes, Maya had whispered, her eyes fixed on James. They're yours. James stood frozen, the words echoing in his mind. He had braced himself for denial, for rejection, but hearing the truth filled him with both joy and unbearable regret. His throat tightened, and for the first time in years, he struggled to breathe. He looked at the children, and his chest ached. They were laughing together now, pointing at a candy stand nearby, innocent and unaware of the storm between their parents. James felt the weight of 5 lost years pressing down on him. He had missed their first words, their first steps, their birthdays, their laughter. He had missed everything. Maya, his voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call? Her face hardened, though her eyes shimmered with pain. You want to know why? Because I knew you wouldn't be there. Not really. That's not true, James protested, but his voice was weak. She shook her head. James, do you remember the night I begged you to come home early? I told you I was sick, and I needed you. But you stayed at the office. Do you remember the night I cried in the kitchen, saying I felt like a stranger in my own marriage? You promised you'd change. You never did. James dropped his gaze to the floor, shame burning through him. He remembered. He remembered every detail she spoke of, though he had buried them deep under years of work and success. When I found out I was pregnant, Maya continued, her voice trembling, I sat in our empty apartment holding the test in my hands. I thought, maybe this will bring him back to me. Maybe now he'll realize what matters. But you were gone more than ever. You were chasing meetings, chasing deals. And I knew, James, I knew I would be raising them alone even if I stayed. Her words cut through him like knives. He lifted his eyes, desperate to explain, but she stopped him with a shake of her head. I left because I couldn't keep living like that. And when the twins came, I didn't tell you because I couldn't bear the thought of them growing up waiting for a father who would never show. I didn't want them to know the pain of being second to your ambition. James's chest tightened. He had faced investors who doubted him, competitors who wanted him crushed, banks that refused to give him loans. But never had he faced a truth so sharp, so undeniable. He had been absent. He had chosen his empire over his family. And the cost of that choice was standing in front of him, two small lives who didn't even know his name. I thought I was doing it for us, James whispered, his voice thick with regret. I thought if I became successful, I could give you everything you deserved. Maya's eyes softened for a moment. But James, all I ever wanted was you. Not your money, not your empire. Just you. Silence stretched between them. The noise of the airport seemed distant, like another world. James wanted to reach for her hand, to tell her he was sorry, to beg for another chance. But his hands stayed at his sides, trembling. I missed so much, he said finally, his voice breaking. Their first steps, their first words, birthdays, Christmas mornings. I missed it all. Maya's lips pressed together. Yes, you did. And no amount of money, no amount of regret, can give those moments back. James felt the sting of tears in his eyes, but he held them back. He had spent his whole life building an image of strength, but standing here, he felt weaker than ever. But maybe I can still be here now, he whispered. Maybe it's not too late. Maya studied him for a long time, her face unreadable. At last, she sighed. I don't know, James. I don't know if you can be the man they need. You say you want to be here, but what happens when work calls again? What happens when the next deal is more important than a bedtime story? I won't let that happen again, James said firmly, his voice steadying. I've built everything I dreamed of, and it means nothing compared to them. Maya, please let me try. Her eyes searched his, as if looking for the truth. For a moment, James thought he saw a flicker of hope, but then she looked away, pulling the children closer. They don't know you, she said softly. To them, you're just a stranger. I can't let you confuse them unless you're truly ready to stay. James nodded slowly. Then I'll prove it. I'll be here. I'll show up. I won't run anymore. The twins, unaware of the gravity of the moment, tugged on Maya's arms, asking again for candy. Maya managed a small smile for them before looking back at James. You say you want to be a father, she whispered. Then show me. Don't tell me, show me. James's heart swelled with both fear and determination. He had lost Maya once because of his pride. This time, he would not let fear or ambition steal his chance again. As Maya led the children toward the store, James stood rooted in place, his mind spinning but his resolve clear. The truth had been revealed. They were his. Now came the hardest part, not claiming them, but proving he deserved them. James followed Maya and the twins slowly through the busy airport. His heart raced with every step. He wanted to rush ahead, to kneel down and hold his children, to tell them he was their father. But fear held him back. They didn't know him. To them, he was just another face in the crowd. Maya stopped near a bench by the candy shop. The twins, excited, pointed at the bright shelves filled with chocolates and lollipops. She handed them a few coins, and they skipped away happily. For a moment, Maya and James were left alone again, surrounded by the noise of strangers yet locked in their own painful silence. James cleared his throat. Maya, please, let me be part of their lives. I can't lose them. Not after today. Maya folded her arms, her eyes filled with both strength and sorrow. You don't understand, James. It's not just about showing up once. It's about being there every single day. These children need consistency. They need someone they can count on. And you were never that man. I know, James admitted quickly, his voice breaking. I failed you. I failed us. But I don't want to fail them too. Maya, I've changed. I see now what really matters. I want to be their father. Her lips trembled slightly, but she looked away. Do you know how many nights I stayed awake alone, rocking them to sleep? Do you know how many birthdays I sat by myself, making wishes for them because their father wasn't there? James, I built their world without you. And now you suddenly want to walk into it? James's heart ached at her words. He had faced loss before, business deals gone wrong, trusted partners turning their backs, but nothing compared to the thought of losing his children. I can't change the past, he said softly. But I can change the future. Give me a chance to prove it. Maya shook her head slowly. You don't understand what you're asking. If you walk into their lives, you can't walk out again. You can't be here for a month and then disappear when business gets hard. They'll be the ones hurt, not me. And I won't let anyone hurt them, not even you. Her words cut deep, but James forced himself to stand tall. I swear to you, Maya. I won't leave. I'll be here. I'll be the father they deserve. Before Maya could respond, the twins ran back, clutching candy in their small hands. Their laughter rang out like bells, innocent and pure. One of them, the boy, tugged on Maya's arm. Mommy, he said, pointing at James. Who is he? Why does he keep looking at us? Maya froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The little girl tilted her head curiously, her wide eyes studying James. He looks like us, she said innocently. James's heart nearly burst. He knelt down so he was eye level with them, his voice trembling but gentle. Hello, he said softly. My name is James. The twins giggled shyly, exchanging glances. The boy spoke again. Do you know us? James's throat tightened. He wanted to shout, yes, I know you, I've missed you every day of your lives. But he swallowed the words and forced himself to speak carefully. Not yet, he said quietly. But I'd like to. The twins smiled, not fully understanding, and skipped back toward the bench. James stood slowly, his eyes locking with Maya's. She looked shaken, torn between the walls she had built and the fragile hope that wanted to break through. You see, James whispered. They already feel it. They see it. I can't walk away now, Maya. Please don't ask me to. Maya pressed her hand against her forehead, trying to steady herself. She had spent years protecting the twins, building a safe world for them, never letting her own heartbreak spill into their lives. But now that James stood before her, she felt the cracks forming. I'm scared, she admitted suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared you'll disappoint them the way you disappointed me. I'm scared they'll love you, and then you'll leave, and it will break them. James stepped closer, his voice steady. Then let me prove you wrong. Let me show them and you that I'm not that man anymore. Maya, I don't care about the boardroom, the meetings, the deals. None of it matters if I don't have them. I can walk away from all of it tomorrow, but I can't walk away from them. Her eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked away. She turned slightly, watching the twins unwrap their candy and laugh together. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she finally looked back at James. They are my whole world, she said firmly. If you hurt them, James, if you break their hearts, I don't think I'll ever forgive you. I won't, James promised. Not this time. I swear it. The airport speakers suddenly blared, announcing flights and final boarding calls. The noise jolted them back to reality. Maya took a deep breath and slowly nodded. All right, she said at last, her voice uncertain but resolute. I'll let you see them. I'll let you try. But understand this, James, this is not about you and me anymore. This is about them. If you want to be in their lives, you'll have to earn it, step by step. James's eyes filled with relief and determination. I will, he said firmly. I'll do whatever it takes. The twins ran back, tugging on Maya's hands again, unaware of the life-changing decision just made. James watched them with awe, his heart swelling with hope. For the first time in years, he felt like he had something worth fighting for, not a company, not an empire, but a family. And deep inside, he silently vowed, he would not fail them again. The airport was alive with rushing footsteps, rolling suitcases, and the echo of announcements. Yet, for James, the world seemed to have slowed down. His eyes stayed fixed on Maya and the twins, as though nothing else existed. He had spent years chasing wealth, power, and reputation. But at this moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was standing here, beside the family he never knew he had, and fighting for a second chance. Maya held the twins' hands tightly, her face unreadable. She had agreed to let James see them, but her voice had been firm. This was about the children, not about rekindling the past. James understood, and he silently promised to respect that. Do you have to go today? James asked gently, breaking the silence. Maya turned to him. Yes, our flight is in a few hours. My sister is waiting for us. James nodded slowly. Where are you staying? Maybe I can visit, just to spend time with them. Nothing more. I only want to know them. Maya studied him carefully. For years she had built a wall around her heart, but the sincerity in his eyes made it hard to ignore. We're staying in Boston for a while, she said at last. If you really mean what you say, you'll come. Not with gifts or promises, James. With time. That's what they need most. I'll be there, James whispered, his voice filled with certainty. The twins tugged at Maya's hands again. The boy pointed at James and asked, Mommy, is he your friend? Maya hesitated. For a long moment, she looked at James, then back at the curious little faces waiting for her answer. Finally, she knelt down to their level. He's someone very important, she said softly. Someone who cares about you. The little girl tilted her head, smiling shyly at James. I like him, she announced. James's chest tightened. He fought back tears as he knelt down too, meeting their bright eyes. I like you too, he said warmly. More than you can imagine. The boy grinned. Will you play with us? James laughed lightly, the sound breaking through the heaviness of the moment. Of course, he replied. Anytime you want. Maya watched quietly. She saw the way James looked at them, not with guilt or distance, but with genuine love. Something inside her softened, though she tried not to show it. Hours passed quickly as they waited for Maya's boarding call. James bought the twins small toys, but he spent most of the time simply talking with them, listening to their stories about school, their favorite colors, and the funny things they did at home. He was amazed by every word, every laugh, every gesture. When the final announcement came, Maya stood with the twins and adjusted their backpacks. James felt panic rising in his chest. He didn't want them to leave, not when he had just found them. Please, he said, his voice urgent but steady. Let me walk you to the gate. Maya hesitated, then nodded. Together, they moved toward the line of passengers. The twins skipped ahead, giggling, while James and Maya walked side by side. You've grown, James said quietly. Maya glanced at him. And you've changed. He smiled sadly. I had to. Losing you, losing them, it woke me up. She didn't reply, but the silence between them was no longer hostile. It was heavy with old wounds, yes, but also with something new, possibility. At the gate, the twins hugged James unexpectedly. The little girl wrapped her arms around his neck. "Will we see you again?" she asked. James's voice cracked as he answered, "Yes. I promise." The boy looked at him seriously. "Don't break it." James placed a hand over his heart. "Never." Maya watched the exchange, her chest tightening with a mixture of fear and hope. She had lived too long protecting her children from disappointment, but seeing James like this raw, humble, determined, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. As they prepared to board, James reached out and gently touched Maya's arm. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "For raising them so well. For being strong when I wasn't. And, for giving me this chance." Maya looked at him, her eyes softening. "Don't thank me yet," she whispered. "Just prove me wrong." The twins waved excitedly as they followed Maya onto the plane. James stood at the window afterward, watching as the aircraft prepared to leave. For the first time in years, tears ran freely down his face, not from loss, but from a fragile hope he had never known before. He didn't feel like a millionaire anymore. He didn't feel like a man defined by his empire. He felt like a father who had been given a chance to make things right. As the plane lifted off, James made a vow deep within his soul. He would show up. He would call. He would fly to Boston. He would learn their favorite bedtime stories, their fears, their dreams. He would be the man his children could depend on. And maybe, one day, Maya would see not the man who once let her down, but the father who never gave up again. The airport grew quieter as the crowd thinned, but James remained standing there, his heart strangely full. He finally understood something he had been blind to for so long. True wealth was not measured by dollars or power. It was measured by love, by family, by the little hands that had just held his. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. A new beginning.